Welcome to Curve Theatre. I'm with Nikolai, who's the artistic director, and Chris Stafford, who is chief executive here. And we are, as you can probably tell, in one of your dressing rooms, partly because the theatre is so busy with your Christmas show preparations. Do you have any room anywhere?
Well,
No,
clearly not.
Not really, no. We are, year on year, day by day, we are bursting at the seams where literally the ends of our corridors now are being used for all of our costumes for West Side Story. We've got hundreds of young people in this week for the Shakespeare Schools Festival. We've got all of our artist development classes going on, our over 55s. So this is the only space other than our office where we could possibly do this.
I mean, that's a good indictment of people using Curve and coming here, isn't it?
Yeah, I think what's interesting about any theatre is sort of how it feels during the day. And I think obviously theatres naturally sort of come into their own at night time or when there's a matinee on. But I know that whenever, Curve really feels alive, it's when it's sort of filled with people. And sometimes you'll walk in the morning and it's deathly quiet, and that's very, very rare. And you think, what's wrong? Because normally when you walk in the morning, it's absolutely sort of noisy with children running around or music or, folk rehearsing both in the rehearsal spaces and around the building. So it's just sort of part of the sort of DNA of the place now that it has truly been sort of inhabited and sort of taken over in some aspects by the local communities. And a lot of the time I think it's really nice because we don't know who everybody is using the space and we don't know everything that's going on, and I think that's really wonderful that there is such ownership and there's so much going on. It's literally impossible to sort of understand every sort of thing that's happening sort of day to day.
But what's it like, Chris, as you're kind of preparing to open those Christmas productions?
I mean, it's joyous because actually Christmas is often the one time of the year that people might say they're going to go to theatre who may not normally go to theatre throughout the year. And for theatres up and down the country, it's often the first experience many young people have of theatre. So there's a real responsibility with that. But also there's a real joy for us in the fact that our building just becomes beautifully chaotic. We've got Giraffes Can't Dance starts rehearsals next week. So they'll be with the West Side Story company, and then Nikolai's been up and down to London in our technical and dress rehearsals for White Christmas. So, I would always describe it as beautifully bonkers. We love our building more and more the busier it gets. And as Nikolai said, when it's quiet, it doesn't feel like it's our building. That's not what the type of building we want to work in.
Yeah, he was so clever, the architect, because I know he got a lot of stick, when the theatre first opened, but it was designed to be inhabited by people, and that was the genius of it, that there was these big, epic landscapes, but they were only really fully architecturally sort of alive when they were complemented and filled and informed by the human architecture. And so that's what his sort of masterstroke was, really, that every aspect of it, whether it's the public spaces or the onstage areas, the auditorium, it all needs to be sort of filled to bring it to life.
So was there something about Curve that made you want to work here in the first place?
I've sort of fallen in love with the venue. I didn't really have, obviously I was aware of it as a major theatre before I took up my role here. But I didn't really sort of have an opinion or, I knew I'd sort of read stuff about it and, heard all about it. But I just sort of, and I wasn't really convinced when I arrived here. I did think it was a bit sort of odd in parts. And I could see there was a lot we had to do in order to really, I suppose, realise the potential of what the architect had sort of set out. And so it's been like all good things. It's happened naturally. And I wasn't in love with it when I first arrived, and I have fallen in love with it, and now I can't imagine sort of doing this role anywhere else.
And we were really lucky that our predecessors, Fiona Allen and Paul Kerrison, got the theatre in such a stable position. It was doing really, really well. And what that gave us is opportunity, and that was opportunity to say, hold on, we've got the keys to this theatre, but what we should never be is gatekeepers. We need to make sure the doors are flung open and that we try things that we may fail at, but that this theatre needs to be positioned and owned by the people who live, work and learn in Leicester. And actually that's what's been joyous for us, because by bringing all of our communities in, they own the work. They own the work that we're taking outside of this building, nationally and internationally, but also they're really honest. And that's not, that can be quite hard, because if they don't like something, they tell us. And I love that. And so for us, the opportunity that we've been given here, and we often say, even though we probably look absolutely exhausted, we've only just started. Yeah. We've actually only just started what we came here to do. And I'm exactly the same as Nikolai. I mean, I love this building. I think it's, I don't have children, but this is the closest thing I have to a child. And our job is to nurture it. And actually, we're now going to nurture it into it becoming a teenager. And as we know, teenagers start to do all sorts of unusual things. And maybe that's what we might do in the next few years.
So the two of you didn't come from theatre backgrounds in terms of your family. How has that informed what you do here?
I can't obviously speak for Chris, but I've grown up always being told that you're wrong and that you don't fit and that you should always be on the other side of a door which is, potentially closed to you. So, and even though I had lots of when I started my journey into the theatre, there were loads of incredible people who absolutely did support, nurture and guide. But for as many of those people, there were probably 5 or 6 more who were sort of on the more negative sort of spectrum. So and as you learn more, you realise that there is no mystery to theatre. There is no sort of sacred space that needs to be protected. And so it just feels natural and right that it should feel like a genuinely accessible space. And it's weird sometimes when we're working with our teams and our staff, that sometimes they still can't quite understand that you can just come into the rehearsal room. You don't have to sort of there's this weird thing when people come in the room and they start tiptoeing and trying to be invisible on the wall, and it's like, I don't know where this has been learned from, because it's not from the ethos of this building, but there's something about, art being this sort of precious thing. You look at Andy Warhol's studio with, people just sort of tearing in with ideas and people and the vibrancy of creation. And I think the more we're enabling people to be part of a process and understanding it and feel part of it, it's not that it's the right thing to do or that's the way theatre's sort of fashionably going at the moment. It's just because it's more interesting. And the more people who come with ideas and challenges and sort of provocations, just the more interesting it gets and the more exciting and lively.
Completely, yeah. I mean, for me, in terms of access in this theatre, is I saw my first play, I think I was 17, 18 years old. I didn't come from a family who went to theatre, and we couldn't really afford it. So I come from a very, very working class background, and I find it always quite funny when I see articles which essentially put me in a bracket where I'm this white middle class man who is, I've been entitled to it. Not at all. The jobs we share very similar backgrounds. The job I've got, I've worked really, really hard for, and that shapes how I run this place. Not only in the fact that I always feel I'm very lucky. I think I've been given an opportunity here, but also the fact that everyone who comes through our doors, I want them to have the best time. I want the bar to be spot on, because that's someone's night out. Let's not take for granted that people have all this income which they can spend going out to see shows. It's so important for me that as many people as possible can see theatre, and I genuinely mean that. £1 tickets for dress rehearsals. We do all sorts of schemes now to bring people in. But it is the fact that I know that it's that classic one, had I have not had that teacher to help me, I wouldn't be doing this career. I would not have a clue what working in theatre would be like other than being an actor.
Leicester is, of course, really famous for its diversity in terms of population. I think 1/3 of the population here are of Indian origin, and so many communities have made Leicester and Leicestershire their home. Does that have an impact on how you programme and what you do here?
Audiences are the first thing we always think about. Whenever we come up with an idea or whenever we're thinking about programming a piece of work from a visiting company, is who's going to come and see it. And then the second question is who we might think might try, and can we try and get them to come and see it. So our audiences are at the heart of everything we do, because we're nothing without them. We can have all these ideas, we can make great work, but if we've got no one coming to see it, then for us, what's the point? We are about audiences. They are our taxpayer, and we take that really, really seriously. And so for us, it's about making sure we've got a programme that is diverse, that we've got actors on stage, that our audiences locally on our doorstep can see themselves on that stage, that we operate a colourblind casting policy where we're making sure that we are saying that this is 21st century Great Britain on our stages. And that also, more importantly, not more equally alongside all of that, is that we're engaging within our communities. Nikolai and I we've lived here. I've lived here 6 years, Nikolai 5 years. We don't know Leicester inside out, and our job and the job of this theatre is to get ourselves out there and get to know those communities. I think the worst thing an organisation can do is to impose what we think you want to come and see.
We don't sort of talk about diversity within our city because it is just absolutely part of our DNA.
It's Leicester.
It's Leicester. We're all Leicester. And I think when I came here, because I'd lived in the East End of London, and you just feel immediately safe because, you know, if you've sort of grown up being in a marginalised community, which as a gay person you have, as a South Asian person you have, as a Afro-Caribbean person you know what it's like to be the person who sort of looks a bit out of joint within, you know, a community that sort of all looks a certain way or behaves a certain way. And I think that's what's so exciting about Leicester, that you just feel very safe and very welcome because diversity is at the heart of it.
So if you had to sum up Curve Life in 3 words, what would it be?
Do we get 3 each?
Yes, 3 each.
Okay, life at Curve Theatre, unpredictable. Exciting. Community.
I would say bonkers, chaotic, but ultimately brilliant.
That's 4 words, but I'll give you that, Nikolai.
What was
Ultimately brilliant.
Oh, well, that was the bridging word. The word is brilliant.